First, if you believe children's lives matter, if you think the truth deserves to be heard, then prove it.
Subscribe now.
Because every subscriber is a voice demanding justice for Jack and Lilly Sullivan. These Janie recordings, as investigators would come to call them, revealed conversations that had taken place inside the Sullivan family trailer in the days leading up to the disappearance. Conversations between Molly and at least one other person whose voice investigators were working to identify. In one particularly chilling exchange, a second voice, deeper, male, speaking in hushed tones, could be heard saying, "Dispose of the evidence after dark." The response, clearly Molly's voice, was equally calculated. "The blanket needs to be torn. Make it look like they try to hold on to it." Another recording captured a planning session that revealed the level of detail that had gone into this conspiracy. "The ATV rental has to be cash," the male voice instructed. "No credit cards, no paper trail." Molly's response showed she understood the implications. "I'll handle the alibis. I know exactly what to tell them." These recordings painted a picture of two people methodically planning every aspect of what would happen to Lilly and Jack Sullivan. They discussed timing, evidence disposal, false alibis, and media management with the cold efficiency of criminals planning a heist. But perhaps most disturbing was how they discussed the children themselves. Not as Lilly and Jack, not as a 6-year-old girl and her 4-year-old brother, but as them and the problems and what we need to deal with. The emotional distance in their voices, the clinical way they discussed making 2 children disappear, suggested a level of detachment that investigators had rarely encountered in cases involving family members. Armed with these recordings, investigators began the painstaking process of identifying the second voice. Audio analysis, voice pattern recognition, and cross-referencing with known associates led them to a family acquaintance, someone who had been present during the search efforts, someone who had offered comfort and support to the grieving family, someone who had been hiding in plain sight. The conspiracy was bigger than anyone had imagined. But investigators still faced the most crucial question: where were Lilly and Jack? All the evidence pointed to careful planning and deliberate deception, but the children themselves remained missing. Had this elaborate conspiracy been designed to hide something even more sinister? The answer would come from surveillance footage that investigators had initially dismissed as irrelevant. Hunting cameras positioned near remote cabins, designed to capture wildlife movement, had been recording continuously throughout the first week of May. When investigators began reviewing hundreds of hours of footage with fresh eyes, looking for anything that might connect to their new understanding of the case, they found something that would redirect the entire investigation. At dawn on May 2nd, just hours before the children would be reported missing, a hunting camera positioned half a mile from the ATV trail captured something that made investigators' blood run cold. A hooded figure, moving purposefully through the pre-dawn darkness, carrying what appeared to be a large duffel bag. The figure's gait, their height, their general build, all of it matched Molly Brooks Murray. But more importantly, the bag they were carrying matched exactly the description of a duffel bag that had been found in Molly's rental car trunk. Enhanced analysis of the footage revealed something even more disturbing. For just a few frames, as the hooded figure turned slightly toward the camera, 2 small shapes could be seen moving near the ATV tracks. Shapes that were the right size to be children. Night vision enhancement technology, the same kind used by military surveillance, was brought in to analyze every pixel of that footage. What they found would change everything investigators thought they knew about this case. There, captured in grainy black and white, were 2 sets of small footprints in the soft earth beside the ATV tracks. Footprints that matched the shoe sizes of Lilly and Jack Sullivan. But here's what made investigators' hands tremble as they reviewed the enhanced footage. Those footprints were there for only a brief moment before they disappeared, as if 2 small figures had been quickly loaded into a vehicle. The children had been there, at that remote location, in the early morning hours of May 2nd. They had been there, and then they had been taken somewhere else. This wasn't a case of children wandering off and getting lost. This wasn't a case of accidental death being covered up. This was evidence of a deliberate plan to remove 2 children from their home and transport them to an unknown location. But the footage raised as many questions as it answered. If Lilly and Jack had been at that remote location on the morning of May 2nd, where were they now? Had they been moved again? Were they still alive? And perhaps most chilling of all, how many people had been involved in making two children disappear so completely that months of intensive searching had found no trace of them? The investigation was about to take another shocking turn, one that would reveal the true scope of this conspiracy and force investigators to confront the possibility that this case was far from over. The encrypted voice recordings had given investigators a window into the planning stages of this conspiracy, but they needed to understand the full scope of what they were dealing with. As cybercrime specialists continued their digital excavation of Molly Brooks Murray's online activity, they uncovered layer after layer of evidence that painted a picture of someone who had been preparing for this moment for months. The voice memos weren't isolated incidents. They were part of a comprehensive digital trail that showed systematic preparation for making two children disappear. Investigators found deleted search histories that included terms like "how long before missing persons case goes cold," ATV rental cash payment, and cellular tower coverage maps Nova Scotia. Each search had been carefully timed and executed through encrypted browsers designed to hide online activity. This wasn't someone making panicked Google searches in the moment of crisis. This was someone researching, planning, and preparing for every contingency. But the most chilling discovery came when investigators found practice recordings that went far beyond the initial voice memos. Hidden in cloud accounts that Molly thought had been permanently deleted were dozens of audio files documenting her rehearsing emotional responses. "Please, please bring them home," she practiced saying, adjusting her tone, her pacing, her level of emotional distress. "They're just babies. They must be so scared." The same phrases she would later use in her televised pleas, perfected through repetition until they sounded spontaneous and heartbreaking. Audio analysis revealed something that would haunt investigators. In the practice recordings, Molly's emotional distress was measurably different from her public appearances. The vocal stress patterns, the micro-expressions captured in her voice, all suggested that her public grief was a performance, one she had rehearsed until it was convincing enough to fool an entire community. Meanwhile, the anonymous Janie recordings continued to provide crucial insights into the conspiracy. The smart device that had captured the conversations in the Sullivan trailer had been recording for weeks before the disappearance, creating an inadvertent surveillance record of the planning process. In one particularly revealing conversation, the unidentified male voice discussed logistics with chilling specificity. "The rental cabin is isolated enough," he said. "No neighbors within a mile, no security cameras, cash payment for the week." Molly's response showed she understood the implications. And after that? The male voice's answer was barely audible. "We'll figure that out when we need to." Another recording captured a discussion about managing the investigation itself. "You need to be visible," the male voice instructed. "Every search party, every media interview, every community meeting. The more present you are, the less suspicious it looks." Molly's response revealed the calculated nature of her public appearances. "I know exactly how to play this. I've been thinking about it for weeks." These recordings revealed that Molly's constant media presence, her emotional public pleas, her organization of search parties, all of it had been part of the deception. By positioning herself as the grieving mother leading the search for her children, she had created the perfect cover for someone who already knew exactly where those children were. But investigators were also uncovering evidence that the conspiracy extended beyond just two people. Phone records showed that in the weeks leading up to May 2nd, Molly had been in contact with at least 3 different individuals whose calls were made from burner phones, untraceable devices purchased with cash specifically to avoid leaving digital trails. The pattern of these calls suggested a network of people involved in different aspects of the plan. Some calls were brief, like coordination check-ins. Others lasted for hours, suggesting detailed planning sessions. All of them were carefully timed to avoid periods when Molly would be in public or when her regular phone might be monitored. The surveillance footage from the hunting cameras provided additional pieces to this puzzle. Enhanced analysis revealed that the hooded figure carrying the duffel bag wasn't alone. In several frames, a second figure could be seen moving parallel to the first, staying in the shadows, but clearly coordinating their movements. This second figure appeared to be male, matching the general build and height suggested by the voice patterns in the Janie recordings. But more importantly, this figure was carrying what appeared to be equipment, possibly camping gear, possibly something more sinister. Night vision enhancement of the ATV trail footage revealed something that made investigators' blood run cold. The two sets of small footprints they had discovered weren't just evidence that Lilly and Jack had been at that location. They were evidence of something far more disturbing. The footprint patterns showed signs of distress. Scuff marks suggesting someone had stumbled or been dragged. Deeper impressions that indicated someone had been standing still for extended periods, possibly restrained. And most chilling of all, the prints showed that both children had been barefoot, despite the cold May morning and rough terrain. This wasn't evidence of children being led somewhere. This was evidence of children being forced somewhere against their will. Forensic experts brought in to analyze the enhanced footage made another disturbing discovery. Soil samples from the area around the footprints contained traces of sedatives, specifically children's sleep medication in concentrations far higher than would occur naturally. Someone had drugged Lilly and Jack Sullivan before transporting them to that remote location. The implications were staggering. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision or even a carefully planned kidnapping for ransom. This was evidence of something far more systematic, far more sinister. Someone had been planning not just to make these children disappear, but to ensure they couldn't resist or call for help during the process. But even with this mountain of evidence, investigators still faced the most crucial question: where were Lilly and Jack now? The footage showed them being transported away from the ATV trail, but where had they been taken? Were they still alive? And how many people were involved in keeping them hidden? The investigation was about to reveal answers that would shock even seasoned investigators who thought they had seen everything. Because the conspiracy to make Lilly and Jack Sullivan disappear was about to be exposed as something far more elaborate, far more calculated, and far more horrifying than anyone had imagined. The truth about what had happened to these two innocent children was hidden in plain sight, disguised as the performance of a grieving mother who had fooled an entire community. But investigators were finally seeing through the deception, and what they found would change how missing children cases were investigated forever. As investigators pieced together the digital evidence and surveillance footage, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. Molly Brooks Murray hadn't just been planning the disappearance of her children. She had been orchestrating an elaborate performance designed to hide her involvement in plain sight. The RCMP's Behavioral Analysis Unit was brought in to review hours of Molly's public appearances, interviews, and interactions with search volunteers. What they found was a masterclass in manipulation that had fooled everyone from seasoned investigators to grief counselors. Every tear had been calculated. Every emotional plea had been rehearsed. Every public appearance had been strategically designed to reinforce the image of a desperate mother whose children had simply vanished into the wilderness. But the analysts noticed something that civilian observers had missed. In moments when Molly thought she wasn't being watched, when cameras weren't rolling, or when she stepped away from search groups, her demeanor changed completely. The grief disappeared, replaced by something cold and calculating. Security footage from a local convenience store captured one such moment. Molly had stopped to buy supplies for search volunteers, presenting herself as the tireless mother who wouldn't rest until her children were found. But when she thought no one was looking, the cameras caught her checking her phone and smiling, actually smiling, at a text message. The timestamp on that footage was 3 days after her children had disappeared. Witness statements began painting a similar picture. Search volunteers reported moments when Molly seemed more concerned with managing media coverage than actually searching for her children. She would redirect search parties away from certain areas, claiming they had already been thoroughly searched, despite no official record of intensive searches in those locations. One volunteer recalled asking Molly about Lily's favorite hiding spots or places the children liked to play. Her response was strange. The volunteer later told investigators she couldn't think of anywhere specific. For a mother talking about her missing children, she seemed remarkably disconnected from their daily routines and preferences. If you're someone who believes children deserve justice, who thinks the truth matters more than protecting lies, then you need to subscribe right now. Because if you won't stand up for missing children by hitting that subscribe button, then honestly, what will you stand up for? And if you're not going to subscribe, at least have the courage to tell us why in the comments.